Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Public Forum. I'll remind all present that mobile phones must be switched off before the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Please be aware we have a 5-minute time limit of speeches in the chamber. You will hear a bell ring at 4 minutes and then another at 5 minutes. If you could please wrap up your speech in the last minute, that would be great. I'll also remind speakers that councillors may ask you questions, however, you are under no obligation to answer, and speakers are not to ask any questions of councillors. I'll also remind speakers that they have 1 minute time limit in reply to questions from councillors if they are asked. And lastly, please stick to topic of your item in the agenda so I don't have to bump you back on course. And with that, we first up have Anne-Marie Popplewell is speaking against the recommendation in item 9.4.
That one. That's right. You did show. Good. Bit over here. Good evening, councillors, General Manager, staff, Mr Mayor. I'm a Berrima resident, landholder and ratepayer who will be directly affected by your proposal to again reinstate 7.2 of the Wingecarribee LEP 2010, removing the subsequent amendments of 4.2E and 4.2F for minimum lot sizes for dual occupancy in Berrima. This will be the third amendment to this clause since June 2020. My property already complies with the current rules. I am not a corner block. I meet the minimum lot size and I am serviced by reticulated water and sewage. Yet my DA has been refused. And now council is moving the goalposts again, essentially to exclude Berrima from any further subdivisions. The reasons used against my DA no longer holds. Bushfire risk was cited, but in July this year, the council confirmed my land is not bushfire prone. Front setback was raised, yet council itself has sold land at 17 Oxley Street with a designated building envelope, here it is here, of 8 metres from the front boundary. The homes in Oxley Street East up from Shotts Lane are also 8 metres from the front setback. So this is a normal part of the streetscape here. I had proposed a 20-metre setback, but was told it would have to be around 40 metres. Hardly consistent with the present streetscape. Heritage concerns were raised, but I had a Georgian-style building designed based on council's own Berrima DCP examples. This is in spite of the Borough Charter, which discourages imitation architecture. Importantly, my site has a house already on the rear boundary, meaning that the long tract of land facing Oxley Street is now only suitable for a car park, hardly a Georgian landscape, streetscape. Also, numbers 9, 11 and 13 Oxley Street have already had their Hoddle Blacks altered by a previous subdivision. There was concern about setting a precedence for other similar-sized blocks as mine in Berrima, but very few, if any, have homes situated at the rear of the block. Most have homes in the middle of the block, so a subdivision and dual occupancy would be difficult to replicate. We must also remember that the original Hoddle blocks were designed for families of 6 that required enough land for their animals, horses, cows, vegetable patches, or orchards, room for sewage. This was the only means for residents in the 1980s to survive. Obviously, this is not the case today. I do not dispute the importance of Berrima's heritage, but we must be honest. Oxley Street East already includes several 1950s fibro workers' houses on much smaller blocks. The one nearby, Heritage Sandstone Building at Berrima School, is surrounded by modern demountables. And across the village, there is only a handful of genuinely Georgian homes left. To suggest that my DA would undermine a pristine Georgian streetscape is simply not true. Today, there are far greater historical and heritage challenges in Berrima, with the old historic jail in the process of being converted into a wellness centre, restaurant, extensive car parking and approximately 50 boutique hotel rooms. It is anticipated this will mean a further 250 potential visitors to Berrima, which presently only has a population of 400. At this time, we must recognise the reality of today's challenges. New South Wales faces a housing shortage, and here in Wingecarribee, the pressure has fallen heavily on Bowral, Mittagong, Moss Vale and Bundanoon. But surely it is incumbent on our smaller villages to contribute too, through modest, sensitive infill that represents character whilst also helping address housing needs. My proposal is exactly that: compliant, sustainable, respectful and fair. Councillors, Clause 4.2F is not a loophole, it is a safeguard. To amend it again for the third time in 4 years is not clarification, it is instability. It creates planning uncertainty and it unfairly penalises residents who have already complied with the rules. I ask you to reject this amendment, process my DA and others like it under the current framework. Provide certainty and fairness the residents deserve. Allow sensitive, small-scale housing to occur in Berrima, contributing to our region's needs without compromising its heritage. Surely this proposal goes against what one desires for a healthy heritage village and its residents, to avoid turning it into a ghost town or a museum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just 2 seconds. Was there any questions? Councillor Russell.
Oh, sorry. Off. Okay.
Thank you for being so eloquent about your reasoning. In regards to this proposal, do you know what it's come from? Are you aware of who's been lobbying for this?
I'd say there'd be interested members from maybe the Berrima Residents Association, of which I am a member. Yes, there are certain people that believe this is, the heritage takes precedence over everything. And I agree, it has to be managed properly. But I just think if this is going to go down the path of no subdivisions or dual occupancies where it's sensible to do so, I think it could create lots of problems in the future for Berrima and its residents.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Russell.
So, do you want anyone else?
Are you aware of any areas where the subdivision has happened in some way that might have triggered any push for this amendment that we're looking at today?
I've got a loud voice. I am not personally aware of that. I know there have been a number of DAs that have been approved, some very close to the river, and that might have raised riparian issues, but it didn't. But no, I don't see it as an issue myself. And at the moment, I've got this house right at the end of this block, and I've got this long shooting gallery with nothing there, and at the front is just a car park. And that's hardly what you want for a Georgian village, even though there's really nothing Georgian on my street anyway.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Judy Coverdale of Berrima Singers is speaking against the recommendation in item 9.12.
Hi everyone. I was hoping to distribute something. I sent something a bit late to Paige, but you do have an email from me already. Okay. I wanted to show you the physical thing I'm talking about, the arts info. Use it on there. Thank you. And then there's almost 9 of those. That's the full one. So you got a long email if you saw it. Okay, so what I'm speaking about is something. I've been in the Highlands almost 20 years next year, and the first week I came down I started singing with the Bundanoon Voices, and I've been singing in choirs ever since. But I came down to set up a sculpture practice, so I've been involved in the arts sector and the Arts Trail. My studio was on the Arts Trail in 2019. So I have a really long history and knowledge of the arts sector and culture here. And so what I find a shame is that we had the most brilliant Arts Info newsletter here until 2019. So if you have a look on some of those things, the last one was February 2019. There were 87 events listed for that week. Jenny Keener is your Citizen of the Year. She used to produce it in her job. She now does a wonderful letter for Robertson instead. So I've talked to her and consulted her about this. It was a very simple, plain text, as you will see, newsletter. She had a simple format, groups of all micro, professional, whatever, all knew to put their thing in a very simple, plain text format. So it worked. And if you had visitors to the Highlands, you could look and you've got rock music, classical music, puppets, circus, everything. And we've really lost the fabric and infrastructure of supporting our arts community when we lost this. I know we have the Fold, Destination Southern Highlands, we've got all of those, my Shire, but they're not actually doing the job. So that's why I put a submission and objected to saying, just let this go through the Creative Highlands Strategic Plan, because we actually need the Arts Info letter back. So in the two proposals I've given you, one's talking about, so what happens is even professional people, like I have a friend who lectured in advertising who tried to put her event on the, My Shire website, on the destination. She took half an hour, it undid, it went back again. The same thing, a Berrima Singers publicity woman that used to manage Stack Research Library at Sydney Uni. She's very clever, but she really struggles with this. It takes about half an hour to try and work through these sites because they're streamlined, they're social media. They look terrific, but they're actually missing this micro infrastructure of our community. So all these little groups are still going. They're still trying to get audiences, they're trying to get people to exhibitions, and they're struggling and they're thwarted. So having been in them, like the Berrima Singers, since COVID, what has happened is shops and shop fronts are not willing to put up flyers in the window. They want to keep everything clean. So the whole community infrastructure's gone down. An anecdote is I ran into Alan Stiles, the conductor of, the orchestra, putting up his sign again in Coons Lane. There's a notice board there. It's like the Hunger Games now, that groups are taking down other people's signs, or it's just awful. I mean, that's pathetic for the orchestra. And they do need the electronic board in the front of the Memorial Hall. So in the proposals I've given you, that's another thing, community notice boards. We could have physical ones, not just electric, but the Barrett Memorial Hall needs it. So basically what I've come up with is a proposal to maybe apply for a grant. There's a one-off quick response regional grant that could be done by a group or an individual for $3,000. They're given out every month. So that could fund either Jenny Keener to consult to actually set the system up that she did before on MailChimp at council. We will revive the list. I would undertake to consult all those groups, contact them, and get them to agree to give their mailing list to council, so that it needs that imprimatur, that it's not just done by some group. And so then we could contact all of them and we'd refresh and revive this very simply. It's a real no-brainer. So I'm just hoping that you will read and look at these things and support reviving it. There's a lot of work in it, but it can be done, and we're willing to do it for you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Whoops.
Thank you, Judy. You mentioned, I've just briefly looked at your proposal. You've mentioned applying for grants. Who are you suggesting would apply for that? Do you have, because obviously they need an organisation behind it. Have you thought about that?
Yes. I've spoken to the person who runs the grants. They're called quick response grants. And so individuals could be eligible. the Berrima Singers or one of the Highland Theatre groups, Steve Cheers, he's fabulous already, but someone can front up to do it, or I'm willing to do it as an individual with the base of everyone behind me supporting me, like saying it's on behalf of all these groups. So it can be done like that, but the council would get more. It would get 5,000 if it did the application. It's a long application, but it's feasible. And they give them out every month. So if we didn't get it the first time, we could try again. And I just think that would be fair because Jenny Keener is such a volunteer, as you know, that's why she won Citizen of the Year. She's willing to help, but I think it's only fair. She doesn't want to take any money, but we would pay CTC, so the contract would be with the Robertson Community Centre, and she would do the work voluntarily. So, I mean, you can't ask for more than that to actually get something going.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. And also, have you also considered either approaching, I know the Southern Highlands Community Foundation has a granting round open at the moment. It would need a not-for-profit organisation behind it to apply. But have you considered other organisations, or also Southern Tablelands Arts is very supportive? Have you considered those?
Yep. Southern Tablelands Arts yesterday. He's the one who put me onto that grant. Jenny, I must say, to be fair, is saying it's not only her who could do it, even though she's the one with the expertise and could set it up very fast. We could tender for it and get someone else to do it as well. It's not a difficult task. It's all there on the system. We just need to revive and refresh it.
Okay, Councillor Foley.
Thank you, Judy, for coming in and sharing your experience and expertise in this area in the arts. And just wanted to ask a question. We have, as part of our agenda today, item 9.9, the communications and engagement strategy that's going out as a draft for exhibition. Would you be willing to contribute some of your information here into the feedback as a submission of the communication strategy to give that sort of specific arts point of view?
Yes, of course. Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next we have Wayne Pratt is speaking for recommendation of notice of motion 10.2.
Firstly, thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors, council staff and the public gallery for being here to hear us today, and specifically thank you to Councillor Moylan for putting this formal motion in front of council. I'll speak in favour of the motion, and I wish to lay out a short, clear picture of why this teaching unit at TAFE, just down the street here from us, literally on the same street, why it's so valuable to students and our broader community, a snapshot of what's actually occurred and is occurring there, why more action and support is needed, and why council's support for this matter is appropriate and actually matters. And to summarise that, we already know this is an issue where local activism and power works. And given that it's for education for young students, I would think it's the definition of non-partisan. In fact, I'd say that across this whole room, there is not a single one of us who is not an avid fan of the power of education for young people. So the teaching unit we're talking about is located within TAFE's Equity, Foundation Skills, Aboriginal Culture and Languages section. To quote from TAFE's website, equity programs at TAFE aim to ensure that all students, regardless of their background, have access to quality education and training and can achieve their learning goals. Now, I speak on this matter as a parent who's had two daughters going through this unit, one completed, one now completing. I've seen the transformation that it provides. In the case of my older daughter, who has Asperger's syndrome, she went from being a non-verbal hermit who had not spoken in 6 months and was locked in her bedroom and incapable of attending school, to completing her Certificate 4 last semester, and the teaching staff tell me that we should be expecting an 8R in the mid-90s. In the case of my younger daughter, she was bullied to the point of physical assault and in fact assaulted by a teacher. So her schooling had been disastrous. So for her, huge amounts of social anxiety, personal physical security anxiety, and ADHD and dyslexia to cap it off. Now, in the first half of this year, she completed both Year 10 and Year 11 in this TAFE unit, with an average grade in her results in the high 90s. She has been intending to complete her Certificate 4, which is the Year 12 equivalent, in this half of the year. So she's been able to accelerate her education through this unit. So I'd define it this way. Right here on this very street, we have a hidden diamond that adds an enormous value to the treasures of our local region. And yet, very few people across the Highlands really know about it. Although I will point out there are members of council staff here who have had children go through this unit. Now, every one of the students, by definition, comes from a background that encompasses significant challenges: Indigenous, social and economic disadvantage, neurodivergence, being bullied or assaulted at previous schools, domestic violence, housing insecurity, homelessness, the whole gamut. These students, through no fault of their own, end up being the classic square pegs in the round hole of our high school education system. These kids literally did not get dealt enough tickets in the lottery of life. And then they arrive at this TAFE unit. At TAFE, they've been individually assessed, they've had training programs and support programs personally tailored to them. They're treated with respect, and respect is expected from them. Some of the students need extended time to finish their courses because of the background they're coming from and the issues they deal with. Many others accelerate their courses. Many students complete both Year 11 and Year 12 equivalents in a single year. And the results speak for themselves. Last year, they had 18 students completing the Cert 4, which is the HSC Year 12 equivalent, 8 of those with ATARs, so university entrance scores, and the average ATAR was 95, meaning they outperformed all but 5% of other students in the state. And 2 students actually had state-topping marks in their subjects. Now, what's happened is this. 15th of July, a number of the Cert 4 Year 12 students were sent an official TAFE email that stated, "Thanks for your enrolment in Certificate 4 Tertiary Preparation. Unfortunately, we need to inform you that this course will not be running in Semester 2 due to lower than expected enrolment numbers." So that, by any definition, is course cancelled. I understand that some information has been flowing out from TAFE to suggest the course wasn't cancelled, and that I would define as a very clear, very precise, and very false claim. The students had less than 3 business days' notice of the cancellation of their courses. And for the ATAR students, those wanting a uni entry, it imposes more than a 12-month delay before they would have another chance at this. The alternatives they were offered weren't true alternatives. They were told they could go to Wollongong, to Goulburn, or do online. I'd ask for an extension of time, if I may.
Sure, go for another minute, that's fine.
So, and let me highlight this, the online courses were being offered to students where we have on file medical definitions that says online will not work for their particular situations. So the neurodiverse crowd, for example. So Monday, 21st of July, when their courses were meant to have started, the students gathered and put student activity, put actual direct action into play. They forced an impromptu meeting with the TAFE middle management who were responsible for this decision, and they were again told their courses were cancelled. I was in that meeting and attest to that simple fact. They were told their courses were cancelled, and that Wollongong, Goulburn or online were their only options. Now, there were more students in that meeting than the minimum number of students needed to run the course. And that was the original premise on which the course was cancelled. So they couldn't use that excuse. They then shifted to budgetary constraints, and they then shifted to lack of teaching staff. Again, we can document that those are false claims. On the back of that, I contacted the Goulburn State MP, Wendy Tuckerman, on a Monday. And by Wednesday morning, she was at the gates of TAFE with media in tow, which is exactly what you would expect and hope for from a local representative. And by Wednesday night, the students began receiving emails telling them to attend TAFE the next morning, and I quote, "to offer a one-to-one review of your current pathway to successfully complete the Certificate 4. So from cancelled to magically uncancelled with a bit of pressure from local representatives, which is where council comes to this picture. Now, we're now into week 4, and all the students will confirm there's much more to address to getting things up to standard. Online presentations are so bad that we have some students now driving to Goulburn with the risks that entails for P-plate male drivers, to try and get to face-to-face teaching. We've got several students who've received no pathway back into their courses at all and are still excluded. We've got no student receiving the actual hours of teaching that is claimed. The Minister for TAFE and Education wrote to me about that and laid out claims of what hours they're getting. He has been misinformed. I went around and got each student to write down for me the actual hours they're getting. So I state that as a simple fact. So this motion helps to keep pressure on those within TAFE to do the right professional and ethical things that they're obligated to do. If it's passed, it puts council on the side of moral right, pure and simple, supporting education access for kids who don't have alternatives and do flourish in this environment. The motion doesn't cost council anything, it doesn't obligate council to further action, though I hope many of you have now got a piqued interest and want to learn more, and we are available to brief anyone, and it places council where it should always strive to be, as a central voice for the local community.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, Councillor Wong.
Thank you, Mr Pratt, for coming along today and contributing to the community. A couple of questions. Actually, before I start, I'm so sorry about your youngest daughter's experience at school, and congratulations to her for her amazing result. So please pass that on. Would you expect an increase in the number of enrolments year on year in this region for TAFE?
For TAFE in general, I have no expertise to speak to, but I've actually sat for the last 2.5 years nearly every day in the TAFE canteen working, because that's the easy way for me to get my kids to and from the TAFE unit. So I know the students and the families and have previous professional experience in building and founding schools. So I know that environment reasonably well. And in fact, I supervise the HSC for one of the local schools here. From that viewpoint, this unit, properly known and publicised, would have 50, 60, 70 families applying a year, without a doubt. It fills such a vital need for so many kids.
Thank you. Councillor Moylan.
And you mentioned that there was sufficient teaching staff. Have I heard correctly?
Yes, you have. And just to continue on that, attested to by the fact that a week after cancelling the courses, magically the students are invited back in to start their courses straight away. So from that piece of logic alone, we know that sufficient staff is there, then supported by the Minister writing back to me saying each student will be given X, Y and Z hours of classes. Not being observed, but yes, TAFE does not think it has a teaching supply problem.
Okay.
And lastly, can you confirm that there is indeed the Cert 3 and Cert 4 offered at Moss Vale TAFE, and also the Year 10 Cert 2?
So I can confirm all of that, and the next speaker can speak to that as well. Easy way to confirm it, my younger daughter completed the Cert 3 in the first half of this year and just got mailed her certificate.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. So do you have, this is just your personal opinion, do you have any sense of why this has happened?
Ooh, that's a honey trap of words. Yes, I do, and it's ultimately, I think, a cultural thing. 90% of TAFE is based around a very pragmatic set of technical skills with incentivised students, by which I mean someone coming in to do carpentry or electrical services is most likely an apprentice, being paid, and their boss is being funded to have them at TAFE. The student's incentivised because the boss will kick them in the tail if they're not studying, and the student is incentivised because if they get the qualification, they get a higher pay rate. And therefore, that can all run as a very mechanical operation across most of TAFE. Then they have a special education unit designed to take on the people who have really already been marginalised. That has to ultimately run under management staff who are not tradies, but are specialists in education and social access. So I see it at the highest level as being a major cultural issue within TAFE. This little unit, 5% of their students, is a really, really different, but really, really important, separate culture to the rest of TAFE.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Jonathan Hatcher is speaking for the recommendation in notice of motion 10.2. Sorry. Wait. Yeah. And just so you know, there's the bell at 4 minutes is it gives you a minute left. Just so I hate cutting people off. It's just to let you know. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jonathan Hatcher. Thanks, everyone, for your time here today. I want to run through three very quick things. I want to give you context in relation to, in a sense, what Wayne talked about, the context of the equity unit within the TAFE system, and give you two examples of student journeys over the last 3 years. I've been a TAFE teacher at Moss Vale. I was until the 20th of July. My contract wasn't renewed. It's a disclaimer, I have disputes in front of WorkCover and so on, but it's got nothing to do with me. It's not a personal thing, and I don't want it to become a personal thing about my situation. So just to explain the equity division, it's actually 30% overall, 29% of TAFE's enrolments. And when we look at the differences or the genesis of where TAFE developed, we started off with vocational education, building carpentry, plumbing and so on and so forth. And in a sense, the equity side of it came a little later to the game. And what this means is that we have relatively linear deliveries in these areas, yeah? We get a stick, we cut it in half, we glue it together, we make a stool, we make a table, we make a house, yeah? And it progresses along in a fairly linear way, yeah? And also, the cohort is relatively motivated, as Wayne spoke to, and they're also relatively generic, right? Typically male certainly until recently, okay, and so on. And this means that you can give a linear delivery, yeah? In the equity area, we have exactly the opposite. The cohort, yeah, is impossible to classify, yeah? I've run every interview in the last 3 years for every student that's come into the Cert 2, 3 and 4. And they're all very, very different, and it's very, very difficult to predict exactly what you're going to get and what you might need to do. So context is really important. This division is different to the rest of TAFE, and there's a huge difficulty in TAFE management accepting that, okay? Some student examples. Let's call him Jim, came to us in about 2021, 19 years old, been at local high school, ASD, so spectrum disorder, not on the spectrum, probably off it, ADHD, so on and so forth. Extreme intelligence, extreme verbal ability. When you tried to get him to write anything down or be in a classroom, impossible. In fact, we couldn't have him in classrooms, too disruptive, yeah? Because just a stream of consciousness, no social cues or boundaries, didn't understand stuff. Got him through Cert 3, and into Cert 4, wanted to go to university, highly aware of his differences and so on. And in the end, what happened with him was we got him through his essays. He did literacy, so politics, media and English, and we got him through his essays quite well but our problem was when we came to exams because, again, he didn't want to sit down and write, and he wouldn't sit down and write. Yeah, couldn't get him to sit still. We eventually got a disability support person to assist him in writing his essays in the exam situation. The first one, he accepted that, did really well, and then decided in the second one, the young fella came and saw me afterwards and said, we've got a problem. Jim decided he didn't want help and he was going to do it himself. Disaster for Jim, right? Got his dad in, got him in that afternoon and told him, no way. We're not doing it. You need a scribe. You have to have one. I'm sorry. Yeah, we need to help you. Yeah, and you need to help yourself. Anyway, had a scribe for the last one. ATAR equivalent, around 89, gone to university. Another example, female. Let's call her Meg. Meg came to me first, 14 years and 10 months, local high school. Kept in a special unit in the local high school because she had extreme sensory issues. Yeah, and couldn't cope in the environment. And she bounced around between normal classes and the special classes for some time. She was brought to me at 14 and 10 months. She came into the Cert 2 Year 10 equivalent. She got through that last year, and long story short, she finished her Cert 4 in June this year. And again, I made a mistake with her, I must admit. She would probably end up with an ATAR in the high 80s. Did very well in the written assessments that she had time to do herself, but in the exam situation, she struggled. My fault to a degree, and I realised a couple of weeks later what had happened. I was driving along and I thought, wow, she didn't really go to school in Year 7 to Year 10, so she'd never actually done an exam. And again, we put her in a situation where it's like, hold on, we should have given her more support, yeah? So, again, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you've got, and anything that, to be honest, that I've said or Wayne says is verifiable, it's evidential, yeah? And happy to provide evidence to anyone. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just in your experience, is this a problem that's unique to Mossvale TAFE, or is this an issue, you were talking about how unique this sort of department or this work is. Do you have a broader sense of whether it's just here or across the board?
My sense would be that it's actually broader and across the state, right? And I think it comes back to this idea that I suggested at the beginning, that the mid-management people see it differently. The guy who's the director at the moment is a welder. The one before him was a gardener. I love gardens, and people who stick metal together, that's fantastic. Good on them, right? No problem, yeah? But when we get into special education, I have to have very high-level qualifications, postgraduate in adult language and literacy, to be able to teach units at the HSC level. Higher qualifications than a teacher in the state high school system, yeah? So, again, it's not it doesn't mean I'm better, it just means that I have different skills. I can't stick metal together, yeah? Okay, that's okay, yeah? But I think that, yes, it is a wider, broader problem, yeah, that they're trying to shrink down because they don't get it, they don't understand.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you. You would have been amazing as one of my teachers. With this course, how is it advertised? How would, historically, how would people have found out that it existed?
It's an interesting question because this is a responsibility that's been passed around into different areas of TAFE. Now, again, I'd suggest that there is an overall idea or philosophy of curbing numbers, okay? They don't want to advertise it, right? They would prefer to shrink. There's a mantra that goes around TAFE, and I could, again, send you links to videos from the MD and so on, that say we're not in a growth phase, right? We have documents, I have documents and emails that say things like, oh, well, it's not about what the community needs, it's actually about fitting in with what we can supply rather than, again, top down rather than bottom up, yeah? Which, again, obviously causes issues for me because I see it the other way, yeah? So it's, I know for example, yeah, because again, TAFE has this attitude that, oh, no, we're not in a growth phase. We're in a, a holding pattern, yeah? We don't want to increase our enrolments from 460,000 or whatever it is. Yeah, does that make sense?
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
So what you're suggesting is that the reasoning for shutting it down is perhaps someone not understanding that it hasn't been promoted at all in terms of the success of how it might be if it was better advertised.
Yeah, look, that's true, but at department, yeah, if I tell you that 6 out of 18 got ATARs over 94 last year, it's true, right? Okay. Now, the algorithm, there's some variations in it. You want to say 93? Say 93, I don't care. Yeah. People think that in our unit, it's all the stupid kids, in inverted commas, that come to TAFE, right? And there's lots of students that have they all have challenging backgrounds usually, but we also get all the square pegs, round holes. We get the spectrum-y kids who are really, really, really bright, yeah? Typically, it's either in STEM or literacy. It's highly unusual to find both. Had one last year.
Thank you. Councillor Foley.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Are all of your students undertaking this course school-aged students that would otherwise be in mainstream, or do you have mature-age students that are doing the courses as well?
So overridingly, it is younger students, okay? And if you look back at sort of a general history in TAFE, we could say that 80% of students 20 years ago were mature age students, over 21, right? Okay, in this area, yeah. Now it's 80% under 18, yeah. Okay, so it certainly has changed, yeah. And I'd say, let me think, out of the 22 Cert 3s, probably maybe only 2 or 3 were over. One was 35, yeah. 2 or 3, maybe 20 or older, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Jonathan, I don't have a question. I just have some thanks on behalf of all of us that you've come and shared your experience. As a father who's nearly got his last child out of high school, mainstream schools are, you know, sometimes intimidating, just the wrong fit. We'd had considered TAFE at one point, and I think, you know, it needs to be looked at in the round of HSC opportunities, doesn't it?
You're right, and you mentioned an interesting word there, which is fit. And when parents, I said I've done 3 years worth of interviews, and probably 60 students a year, so let's say 180, right, something like that. And the question that I've always asked at the beginning, very, very quickly, is we're trying to assess fit. We want to understand how you will fit here. Yeah, this is more important than what you might test in literacy, numeracy. We kind of don't care. We have to work out how you fit in. Yeah. So, you know, do I have to have you separate? Do I have to have you here? What do I have to do to make it work for you? Yeah, and that's the most prominent question. Fit's a vital thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Champion and then Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Mr Hatcher, so much for your presentation today, but also for your work.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Moylan.
Thank you for coming along today, and thank you again for all your service. You sound like an amazing teacher. A question. Now that we've got a partial solution, a Band-Aid solution of the blended delivery with some online work and some face-to-face work, would you say that a lot of the students that you just talked about would completely disengage if they were online even part of the time?
Obviously, it's subjective, yeah, but let's just look at some sort of broad numbers, right? There were 7 students who completed the Cert 3 who went into Cert 4 to finish at the back half of the year. And there was about 7 or 8 that were ongoing year-long students, right? And often we do them year-long because there's complicated circumstances. Yeah, they've got to work, so on and so forth. So we'll spin it inefficient, okay? So we had about 14 students, right? For ease of division, let's call it 15, okay? Out of those 15, a hybrid model, normally I'd probably expect 12 of them out of 15, 80% to complete and get an ATAR, yeah? It'd probably be, I think we'd be lucky to get 6 in the current situation. Again, they'll disengage, and again, these are kids that have come from difficult places, right? You know, travelling from Hilltop, whatever, on a bus, yeah? If it's boring or if they feel as though they're not heard or respected, they're young people, man. They're going to react emotionally. Yeah, that's just how it is. So yes, it definitely has a material effect on changing trajectories. And in some ways, I understand there's costs involved, but changing trajectories even for a single person is kind of worth it, and it's economically worth it as well. So anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that concludes Community Forum. We will reconvene at 3:30.